Okay, once it comes to actually starting to play a game, once you've hit a new game, you can select an empire. You can create one of the ones, you can choose one of the ones you've previously created, and then just hit select. And then you get the game detail screen. So the game detail screen is literally deciding the type of empire or the galaxy that you're going to encounter. So you have a couple of different sizes. You have a huge, just 1,000 stars, the biggest. You have a tiny, 200 stars, small, 400, medium 600, and a larger 800. Obviously, depending on the size of the galaxy, really does depend on the size, the length of the game. If you want a fairly quick game, I'd go for 200 stars. If you intend to play a game for a little while, over maybe a little few days, you may want to go up to 1,000 stars. It does also mean that obviously the amount of other people that would exist in the universe changes depending on the size of the galaxy. So 1,000 stars, these are the recommended amounts of other empires. So you have 11 others, for example, but only in a tiny, you'll only have an additional 3 others. Because obviously if you have a lot of people in very small space, the game's going to be over very quickly. And so galaxy shape is the other option. You have an elliptical, which is just essentially a big ellipsis space. It's not really difficult to describe. It's an elliptical space galaxy. You have a ring, which is literally just a big circle. So if you are, for example, looking at a clock face, if you're up at the 12 o'clock area of the clock, you can only attack people by either going to where 11 o'clock is or by 1 o'clock is. You can only go clockwise or counterclockwise. If someone is down at the 7 o'clock point in the screen, you have to go via 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if there's a lot of other people there, you have to either fight or negotiate your way through their space. A ring. Sorry, let's adjust this size. So medium, 600 stars. So just to explain that what I've just done there is only a limited range of types of galaxy shapes depending on the type of stars that you're doing. So huge, I have all of them except for... No, I have all of them. So ring, as I've just explained. Spiral is 2 arms or 4 arms. Now, the easiest way that I can describe a spiral one is there are several branches, essentially, of the galaxy. That's essentially controlling 4 branches or 2 branches. It's almost a ring shape, but there are points. There's an inner ring and an outer ring, and if I have 4 arms, there is a branch on that inner and outer ring at 4 points or at 2 points. That is literally the easiest way I can explain the galaxy shape. AI empires, as I said before, is quite self-explanatory how many other AI-controlled empires there is. You can go up to 21, or you can go as low as 1 if you want. You can control how advanced that AI is, so depending on how difficult you want it yourself, you can adjust the advanced AI stats. So for example, if I have 21 other AI empires, I can set all 21 of those to already be further than me in their research. Or I can set it so that none of them are further than me on research, so we're all on equal footing at the start of the game if I decide. Fallen empires. Now, fallen empires are the big badass guys that exist in the universe that have long since gone, shall we say. They still exist in a small portion of what their space used to be. They are very advanced. Their technology is fully developed. They have fully developed every type of research you could possibly think of. Their planets are very advanced as well. They have great technology on them, but you don't generally want to annoy them. You want to try and remain on a good terms with them or in equal terms with them, and you don't want to do something that's going to annoy them. So, for example, one of the fallen empires that you may encounter would be a holy empire. Now, if you encounter a holy empire, it means that there's probably going to be holy planets that exist outside of their sector of space. If you decide to inhabit one of those holy planets, they may come along and decide, I don't want you to be there, and exterminate you off of that planet. So if this is relatively early on in the game, you're not going to stand any chance against them at all, and they're probably going to wipe you out. That is a fallen empire. Primitive civilizations. Now these are individuals that exist on planets that haven't exactly evolved into what we'd classify as the space age. They're not technologically advanced. They could be your Homo sapiens from 20 million years ago, for example. They are good in the sense that later on you can research technologies that uplifts them and integrates them into your society if you wish. You can also put an observation post on their planet so you can observe them as they develop in the sense that you'll get additional research from that, depending on if they're, for example, in the same age that we're now. If they're in the early space age, for example, you can actually decide that you want to turn up early and technologically advance them to modern day society. It's going to cost you resources in each turn, but it also means that those people are more likely, they're going to be your subjects. They are going to serve you because you have helped them. Over time, you can then integrate them into your society if you wish, depending on the type of ethics that you've introduced. Crisis strength, we'll go with... They changed it. So, crisis strength dictates the game has an end game crisis. Now, an end game crisis means that something is going to happen at some point that's going to threaten the entire galaxy. Now, you can turn the crisis strength off, or you can turn it up to 5 times. Now, the crisis strength dictates how strong that crisis is going to be, quite simply. If it's off, I'm guessing it doesn't happen at all. If it's at 5 times, it means that you're going to be up against the huge odds. Now, when I say threatens the whole galaxy, I do mean threatens the whole galaxy. Regardless of the type of ethics that you have picked, everybody in the galaxy, chances are they're going to want to go and kill this bad guy. The AI is unfortunately not the greatest at doing this. Humans are generally the way forward. Now, the fun thing is, when a endgame crisis does occur, all areas of space open up, so you can navigate through enemy sectors of space. Even if they're not friendly with you and had previously closed their borders to you, you'll be able to get through their space and go and kill the bad guys. Now, I'm talking about fleet strengths in excess of millions when you go up to 5 times strength, which is considerably high in the game. To give you an idea, the fallen empires that are super strong earlier on in the game may have fleets in the hundreds of thousands, which is relatively strong, but against the crises, no. The fallen empires will fall for a super strong endgame crisis as much as any other human empire that exists on the map. And there are several different types of endgame crisis. I'll go into them when I encounter them in the game. They do change the way that you need to think about your ship setups, depending on what you're going to do against them. But yeah, I'll talk about that later on. Habitable worlds, again, are literally, as it says on the tin, habitable worlds are worlds that are inhabitable by you, so they're not dead planets, essentially. A barren planet, for example, or a gas giant is a dead planet. You can't inhabit it. But, for example, I've picked tropical, and if I come across a tropical planet, that is an inhabitable world. So the more inhabitable worlds there are, the greater I can spread my empire across the universe. But in turn, it also means it's very much that I have to inhabit more of the universe to get that conquest, that victory in terms of taking over the universe. AI aggressiveness, again, is what it is on the tin. How aggressive the AI is in terms of actually fighting. Difficulty, again, kind of goes well with the aggressiveness and the crisis strength. So if I set, for example, the difficulty as insane, the crisis strength as 5 times, that is essentially the hardest difficulty that you're going to encounter on the game. Allowed Ftl method. So if you decide that you're going to use warp travel, but you only want everybody else to use warp travel, then you can set it as just warp travel. But you can also do the same with hyperdrive or wormholes. So if you pick just wormholes, you can make everybody else so it's just wormholes, which makes it so it's very strategic in terms of your wormhole gate positioning. Empire placement, random, clusters are your 2 different options. Quite simply, that is where the other empires that you've selected up here are going to get placed. You place them either randomly on the map or in clusters on the map. Advanced neighbors, that makes it so that one of these other AI empires, if they are advanced, you can set it so they start next to you or don't start next to you. Nice and simple. And lastly, Ironman Mode. Ironman Mode, as you can see, it makes the game eligible for achievements, but the downside is that you can't save the game, and console cheats are disabled from the game. The game is saved regularly into a single game file, but you can't turn around and say, "Ooh, I'm going to declare war on these guys, and if it doesn't go well, I'll go back to an earlier save." Nope, that doesn't work. The game will be saved regularly, so whatever you decide to do, that is your decision. But it does mean that, the game's going to save and you can quit and come back to a save at some point, but you can't backtrack your progress. Whatever you decide is what you decide. And that is the game details screen. Right, once you've decided the type of galaxy that you're going to play in and you launch the game, this is going to be the first thing you see. Now, if you have written a backstory for your characters, you will read this here. As you can see, I've actually picked one of the pre-configured nations that exists in the game, which is the United Nations of Earth, just trying to follow the backstory of the human race. As you can see here, much has happened since modern humans emerged from Africa to some 200,000 years ago. Our kind spread rapidly across most of the globe, and soon the first civilization took form, so on and so forth. But you can see here the name of our current ruler, our government, our species, Ftl Method, capital. It's literally just a summary of everything that you would have picked before. So this would be the screen, or you would have the pop-up here if you created your own race, just telling you everything that you essentially already know. It's just giving you a quick summary again. And then you can hit begin.
Good day, Mr. President. I am Veer, a prototype synthetic intelligence. My job is to offer advice and assistance as we seek our destiny among the stars.
Now, Veer is a handy little assistant, shall we say. You have the several different options here. Now, if you're a completely new player, tell me everything's always a good idea. It will give you a full tutorial of the game so that you can learn from him. He is very effective in supplying you with information and teaching you how to play. Don't expect, to win every single time that you're going to play the game, especially if you are brand new. It's just not reasonable. Eventually, once you start to get hold of things that you don't want to get repeated over and over every time you play new games, you can change it to just tips only. And then he'll interject whenever he comes up with a suggestion with the way that you're doing things. Or you can just shut him down. As you can see here, scrap VERS, memory access banks, and game +2 minerals. No tips or tutorial missions recommended for expert players. So once you eventually learn the game, you actually gain a small amount of minerals from it by not having a tutorial system telling you what to do. Right, but just to explain a couple of things on the UI, let's get rid of him. We'll leave it on tips only.
Very well. I will provide tips, explaining only basic functions and tools as you explore them.
Good to know. Okay, so this is your basic UI. With your wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in and out of your solar system. As I picked Earth, you'll notice that this solar system is very similar in the sense that, yes, this is Earth, and yes, this is the Moon. It is pretty standard. When we were going through that initial window before for setting up our own race, we had the option for a Sol system layout, and this is what you would get if you chose it. Not every planet will be inhabitable. Sometimes not every planet will have minerals. Not every planet will... It's mixed up a little bit in terms of the things that each of the planets in the solar system will provide. But yes, let's go over a couple of bits on the UI. So, government.
The government screen presents us with information regarding our empire and its government. Here we can see our ruler and any related effects.
So on this one, you generally don't use it so much when you're actually playing. It just gives you a summary of information for you while you're playing. Modifiers in here start to appear as you're progressing through the game. You have different modifiers that start to affect you. Some through events that happen in the game, some through research, some through trade negotiations, all sorts of different things, but they'll start to summarize themselves in here. Eventually, after you've done some research, you can actually reform your government to give yourself an additional civic option here. It's an option to give you an extra civic point. So eventually you start off with 2, and then as you research through the game, you have the option to take 3. Again, we went through the civics in an earlier video. We won't go through them again, but it just gives you the option to spend an additional civic point, reform your government, and say... they're also going to be this kind of thing. There is a actual limitation. You cannot do it within 20 years of actually starting the game. So generally, you're not actually going to research that extra civic point until later on in the game anyway. So the 20-year restriction is purely for people if they change their mind as to all of a sudden, I don't want to be, I don't know, There we go. I don't want to be an idealistic foundation. You turn it off and you want to say, I want it to have a free haven instead. Unfortunately, you can't. You have to wait that 20 years. For the other options are here, budget.
The budget tab tallies our empire's monthly income and expenses in energy credits. Here we can also track a variety of effects that influence our economy.
As Vex just pointed out, it is literally just a summary screen of essentially checks and balances. It's showing you how much you're gaining through income, so how much you're actually producing, and how much you're actually what your expenses are as energy credits, quite simply. It also shows you how much extra effects that you're having to pay or not pay. So, for example, here, my spaceship module cost at the moment is negative 20%. That's due to my current president that's been elected. Part of his mandate was that, or her mandate, well, given that his name's Tom, I'm giving it's probably a bloke. Part of him being president is he said, when I'm elected president, everybody is going to pay 20% less costs for their space watch. So he gets elected, and yes, that's that. Again, these get affected more and more as the game goes on. Okay, demographics.
The demographics tab tracks the makeup and spread of our empire's populace.
So you can see at the moment, because I am literally a new nation, I am an entire nation of humans. But eventually, as time goes on, as you start to visit more places in the galaxy, you come into contact with more alien races. If you open a migration treaty with them, or you conquer them, you'll end up with a diversity of other species appearing in this screen. It also shows you the effects that these individuals are having across your galaxy. So, you know, as you can see here, my happiness is +5 again because of my current president. There's no real other bonuses that are in effect at the moment because it is fairly early on in the game. But again, if you want a quick summary, this is the screen to go to. Last but not least, Advisor. Now, Advisor is purely a screen for just choosing different voices. We heard them earlier on during the actual selection screen. When you're playing a humanoid biological race that has differing opinions, you can choose based on the government option, and it will just change the type of voice for your people depending on the type of thinking of your people. So if you start the game being a pacifist, your voice for your government will be a pacifist voice. But as time goes on, if you become, I don't know, a xenophobe, you'll hear the xenophobic voice. And that's the government screen.